Hey students, hope you're having a great evening. This is our second session in our series on Listen. I thought Pastor Caleb did a great job last week, just unpacking what it means to be made in the image of God and how we can look at how humanity matters, and we should see the importance in them and their weight of seeing them like God sees them, and especially as Christians, how we should treat them with mercy, with grace, and also with the fact that they are worthy to be loved and to be given justice. Today, we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about what it means to listen well. I think it's so easy for us to not do this the right way. And I think this season, it's so important that we spend some time talking about, hey, what does it actually mean for us to listen well? I was even thinking about this past week. I was texting with my brother and sister. My brother had been home, and they had gotten out the old Nintendo 64 playing a game. And in this game, there's a character called Navi, and she's a little fairy that floats around your character. And anytime that you enter like a dangerous part of the game or something new, Navi goes, "Listen," like really loud, and it gets kind of annoying the more and more you play it. But she says, "Listen," and we were talking about how annoying she could be, but so often in our lives, and you can think about this with other games, like we don't really want the help. We kind of want to just figure it out on our own, just keep going, just live life, and we really think that at the end of the day, we're gonna know what we need to do, how to beat this level, or more importantly in our own lives, how to act righteously or unrighteously, how to respond graciously or without grace. A lot of times we just don't want to listen. We just want to keep playing and move on, and or we think we know better and we know how to figure this out. We've got it taken care of. We don't need to hear from somebody else about this situation. And more importantly than in video games, I think we do this in our own life. And so I just wanted to spend some time with you looking at a verse in James and then talking about what it means to listen well. How do we do that as followers of Jesus? So this is James 1, verse 19. It says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." And the first thing that we see here is that if we want to be people that respond well, respond with the righteousness of God instead of with our own abilities and our own emotions, where we decide what is right and what is wrong, then we've got to be quick to listen. The only way we can do that is if we grow in humility. If we say, look, I haven't figured it all out. I still need to grow in wisdom. I need to listen to someone else. A lot of times we think the most important, worthwhile words in the room that we're in are coming from our own mouth. And the reality is that is so far from the truth, both in God's word and in other people's lives who have experienced other things than us. Like, there is value in what they bring to the table. And so we've got to be willing to listen first. And that's never going to happen if we don't humble ourselves and say, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me here? Okay, God, what do you have to say to this situation? Instead, we just speak into it. And even when we listen, we choose to listen. Bonhoeffer says it like this: we listen with one ear. And all that really does is despise the other person, because what we're really thinking about is how am I going to respond? How am I going to speak back to this? Instead of actually hearing what they have to say. The reality is, so many of us want to speak, want to be heard before we want to hear. And we see that not even just in our relationship with each other, but our relationship with God. You know, God Jesus talks in John 10 about being the good shepherd, laying his life down for the sheep. And he says that my sheep know my voice. I think sadly, a lot of times we spend a lot more time knowing other sheep's voices than our own God's. We spend a lot of time looking at who is putting out the most content on Twitter or in the media outlets that we use, and we know their voices, and we can dissect and look at and pick apart their arguments or voices. But do we really know the shepherd's voice? Because if we do, then we're going to be able to look at the voices around us and say, okay, like how do I listen well to this? How do I chew on the fat and spit out the bones here? Like, what do I do with what I'm listening to? But I think we can be so scared about listening to the wrong thing, and we forget that we need to listen to the shepherd first. So let's be quick to listen, slow to speak in this manner. And then lastly, I want you to dwell on this for a little bit. Like, when it comes to listening well, we need to see that as a form of ministry. Jesus had probably the most to say on earth. Like, he was the word. So he was here to give us a word from God. And yet so often Jesus interacted with people through questions, whether that was the woman at the well, or whether it was the centurion, or whoever, whatever it looked like. Jesus, or especially the disciples, Jesus went about his ministry with them by asking questions, by knowing them, by seeking to understand them, by helping them think. And so how much more do we need to ask questions of ourselves? And so if we want to listen well, we need to be willing to ask good questions. That's why for me, as somebody who's a pastor and is seeking to follow God and understand him, like, I have to surround myself with things that are important, that are pouring into me, that are helping me think through things. That's why I try to listen to people that aren't like me. If I'm only listening to people like me, then at the end of the day, I'm just living in a big echo chamber, and it's just my voice being bounced around on different people. We need to listen to others so that we can understand what their perspective is, and recognize that Christianity is not just here in the southeast of America, that there's Christianity all over the world, and we need to understand it and grow in it. And I think when we do, then we are able to do what the book of Proverbs says. We're able to walk in wisdom because we have been slow to speak and quick to listen in that manner. And so that's my encouragement to you. If you want to continue that conversation, how do we listen well? How do we ask good questions? I'd love to spend some time talking through some resources that have been helpful to me. But at the end of the day, we got to know the shepherd's voice. We have to humble ourselves and say, okay, look, at the end of the day, I need to listen. I don't have this all figured out. I can't beat this level on my own. And then lastly, we need to look at Jesus and how Jesus valued people. Because when you value people, you're willing to listen to them, to show that you care, that you want to understand, and that you want to grow in wisdom yourself. So I hope that's helpful for you. I hope that encourages you this week. Let's continue getting after it. Let's enjoy our summer that's coming up soon, and let's continue to pursue this opportunity that the Lord has given us, even while we're not able to gather at the downtown campus physically. Let's be the church in our communities around us. All right, have a good evening.